Ethan Cole had 17 minutes to reach his daughter's school recital when the luxury sedan exploded across 3 lanes of highway, metal screaming against concrete as glass scattered like deadly rain. He should have kept driving. Every father racing against the clock would have. But when he saw the woman's hand pressed against the spiderwebbed window, blood streaming down her wrist, something older than obligation made him pull over. That single choice would prove that courage doesn't announce itself with sirens. Sometimes it just stops on the shoulder of a busy highway while everyone else speeds past. If you stay with me until the end of this story, you'll discover why one moment of decision can rewrite 2 entire lives. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The morning had started like every other morning in Ethan Cole's carefully balanced world, which meant it started with compromise. His daughter Maya's voice had drifted through the thin walls of their apartment at 6:30, singing something she'd learned for the recital, the school's spring concert. He'd promised her 3 weeks ago that he'd be there, front row, camera ready. She'd made him pinky swear, her small fingers wrapped around his calloused thumb with the kind of trust that made his chest ache. But at 7:15, his phone had buzzed with a text from Jim Horace, the contractor who kept Ethan's small carpentry business afloat. Kitchen cabinet emergency. Clients showing house at 2 p.m. Need you there by 9 or we lose the contract. Ethan had stared at that message for a long time, watching Maya through the doorway as she practiced her stance in front of the bathroom mirror, holding an invisible microphone. 8 years old, gap-toothed smile. Hair that never quite stayed in the ponytail he tried to make every morning. The recital started at 2:30. The job site was 90 minutes away, in the opposite direction. He'd done the math 3 times, hoping it would change. It didn't. "Maya, sweetheart," he'd said, kneeling beside her. "I need to talk to you about this afternoon." The way her face had shifted from bright anticipation to careful blankness was something he'd seen too many times since her mother left. That practiced neutrality that children shouldn't have to master. "It's okay, Daddy," she'd said before he could finish. "Mrs. Chen said lots of parents can't come. I want to come. You know I want to be there." "I know." She'd turned back to the mirror, adjusting an invisible tie that wasn't part of her costume. "It's just singing anyway." Just singing. As if her excitement for the past 3 weeks had been nothing. As if the costume she'd helped him sew from YouTube tutorials didn't matter. As if she hadn't reminded him every single day to mark his calendar. Ethan had driven toward the job site with Maya's practiced disappointment sitting in his passenger seat like a ghost. He'd make it up to her somehow. Take her somewhere special this weekend, maybe that roller skating rink she'd been asking about, something. The highway stretched ahead, 3 lanes of morning traffic heading toward the industrial corridor where new developments rose like monuments to someone else's prosperity. Ethan kept his truck in the right lane, steady at 65, watching the dashboard clock like it held answers instead of just time. 9:43. If he finished the cabinet installation by noon, drove straight back, maybe caught fewer lights than usual, pushed 70 on the highway. The sedan appeared in his rearview mirror doing at least 90. Silver. Low profile. The kind of car that cost more than Ethan made in a year. It cut across 2 lanes without signaling, forcing a minivan to brake hard. Ethan eased his foot off the gas, giving the aggressive driver space to pass. But the sedan didn't pass. It wobbled, just slightly, like the driver had overcorrected. Then it wobbled again, harder this time, the rear wheels sliding right while the front pulled left. Ethan's hands tightened on his steering wheel as he watched the sedan fishtail once, twice. The 3rd time it didn't recover. The car spun completely around, backward now, tires smoking as the driver slammed the brakes. For one impossible second, it seemed like it might straighten out. Then the rear quarter panel clipped the concrete median barrier. What happened next occurred in the strange, stretched time that appears during catastrophe, seconds that felt like minutes, each detail sharp enough to cut. The sedan's rear end hit the barrier and the vehicle pivoted violently, rotating around the point of impact. The passenger side lifted off the ground. The car went airborne, flipping once, completely over. It came down hard on its roof, metal shrieking as it scraped along the highway. Sparks fountained from underneath. The roof compressed with a sound like a thunder crack. Then it hit the barrier again, this time rolling sideways. Glass exploded outward in a crystalline spray. The vehicle flipped a second time, end over end now, pieces of trim and metal flying off like shrapnel. A hubcap rolled past Ethan's truck, wobbling crazily before disappearing under the wheels of a semi behind him. The sedan came to rest on its passenger side, wedged against the barrier, hood crumpled, smoke already rising from the engine compartment. Traffic around Ethan surged forward. Cars flowed past the wreckage like water around a stone. A few brake lights flashed, but nobody stopped. The semi behind him pulled into the left lane and accelerated. A commuter in a Honda glanced over, eyes wide, then looked straight ahead and kept driving. Ethan's foot moved to the brake. Every practical thought in his head screamed at him to keep going. He wasn't a paramedic. He wasn't a firefighter. He had no training in accident response, no equipment, no authority to be climbing around a smoking wreck on a busy highway. Professionals would arrive soon. Someone would have already called 911. His stopping wouldn't help anyone. And Maya's recital was in 4.5 hours. If he stopped now, he'd lose at least an hour. Maybe more if police needed statements. He'd never make the job site on time. Jim would lose the contract. And Ethan would disappoint his daughter again, this time for a stranger he'd never meet, in a crisis that trained professionals would handle better than he ever could. His truck was already slowing. Through the wreckage, backlit by smoke, he saw it, a hand pressed against the interior of the shattered driver's side window. Pale fingers splayed against the glass. Then the hand moved slowly, dragging downward, leaving a red streak. Ethan pulled onto the shoulder and put his truck in park. His hands were steady as he grabbed his phone and dialed 911, but his heart was hammering against his ribs. The emergency operator's voice came through clear and professional, asking him to describe his location and the situation. Northbound Highway 52, about 3 miles past the Riverside exit, Ethan said, already stepping out of his truck. Single vehicle collision. Sedan flipped multiple times, on its side against the median barrier. Smoke coming from the engine. At least one person trapped inside. Are you in a safe location, sir? I'm on the shoulder. I'm going to check on the driver. Sir, I need you to maintain a safe distance until emergency services. There's someone bleeding in that car, Ethan said quietly. I'm not going to stand here and watch. He ended the call and shoved the phone in his pocket. Traffic continued to rush past, 60 miles an hour, 18 inches from where Ethan stood. The wake from each vehicle buffeted him as he approached the wreckage. The sedan looked worse up close. The roof completely crushed on one side, the windshield gone, hood buckled upward like an accordion, and the smoke was getting thicker. Ethan pulled his t-shirt up over his nose and mouth as he reached the wreck. The car had come to rest on the passenger side, meaning the driver's side door was now facing skyward. He climbed onto the undercarriage, testing his weight carefully. Metal groaned beneath his boots, but held. Can you hear me? He called out. I'm here to help. Emergency services are on the way. Nothing. Ethan moved closer to the driver's side window, bracing himself against the car's frame. Through the shattered glass, he could see her, a woman, maybe mid-30s, still strapped in her seat but hanging sideways now. Dark hair matted with blood. Business suit torn at the shoulder, eyes closed. Ma'am? Can you hear me? Her eyes opened. The relief that flooded through Ethan was physical, loosening something that had gone tight in his chest. She was conscious. That was something. Okay, he said, keeping his voice calm. Okay, you're going to be all right. Help is coming. Can you tell me your name? Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She tried again. Lauren. Lauren, I'm Ethan. I'm going to get you out of here, but I need you to stay still and stay calm for me. Can you move your legs? She shifted slightly and grimaced. I think so. Good. That's good. What about your arms? Lauren lifted her right arm a few inches, then stopped, breathing hard. Her left arm hung at an odd angle, still strapped against her body by the seatbelt. My daughter, she whispered. I have a daughter. I know, Ethan said, though he didn't. That's why you're going to stay calm and let me help you. What's her name? Sophie, she's 6. 6. 2 years younger than Maya. The smoke was definitely thicker now, and Ethan could smell gasoline. The acrid chemical scent cut through even the shirt pressed against his face. He scanned the visible interior of the car, looking for fire, but saw only smoke pouring from the crumpled hood. "Lauren, I need to get this door open. It's going to make some noise and the car might shift a little, but I need you to trust me. Okay?" She nodded, just barely. Ethan climbed down and jogged back to his truck. In the bed he kept his tool bag, carpenter's tools mostly, but a pry bar was a pry bar. He grabbed it along with a hammer and a work blanket, then ran back to the wreck. The door was jammed, crushed slightly at the frame. Ethan worked the pry bar into the gap near the handle and threw his weight against it. Metal shrieked and bent but didn't give. He repositioned, braced his foot against the car's underside, and pulled harder. The door shifted an inch, then another. Ethan's shoulders burned as he levered the bar, using every bit of strength he had. The door suddenly gave way, swinging upward and open. He caught it before it could slam back down and wedged the pry bar into place to hold it. "Lauren, I'm coming in. Stay still." He lowered himself through the opening, feet first, easing down into the sideways cabin. It was worse inside than he'd thought. The entire passenger side crushed inward, dashboard cracked and split, center console bent at an impossible angle. Lauren hung in her seatbelt like a broken marionette, blood dripping from a gash on her temple. "I'm going to release your seatbelt," Ethan said. "I need you to hold on to me when I do." "Can you do that?" "I can't. My arm—" "Your right arm, then. Put it around my shoulders." She reached up with visible effort, and Ethan felt her fingers grip the back of his shirt. He positioned himself beneath her, one arm wrapped around her waist, the other reaching for the seatbelt release. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. He pressed the release, and Lauren's full weight dropped onto him. He staggered but held firm, taking her weight as carefully as he could. She cried out, a sharp, pained sound that she tried to stifle. "I've got you," Ethan said. "I've got you." The smoke was much worse now, filling the cabin with a gray haze that made his eyes water. Ethan could feel heat starting to build somewhere beneath them. They needed to move. Now. He shifted Lauren carefully, trying not to jostle her injured arm, and started working his way toward the open door above them. It meant climbing one-handed while supporting her weight, using his legs to push against the crumpled interior for leverage. His boot slipped on something wet. Blood or oil or antifreeze, he couldn't tell. And for a terrifying second, they both nearly fell. Lauren's grip on his shirt tightened, and she made a sound that was half sob, half scream. "Almost there," Ethan gasped. "Just hold on." He found purchase on the twisted dashboard and pushed upward, hauling them both toward the opening. His free hand caught the doorframe and he pulled, using every remaining bit of strength to lift Lauren up and out of the wreck. Fresh air hit them as they emerged. Ethan gulped it down, still supporting Lauren as he maneuvered them both onto the undercarriage of the car. Getting down would be easier than getting up, but not by much, not with Lauren barely able to stand. "We're going to slide down together," Ethan said. "Keep your weight on me." They made it to the ground in an awkward, painful descent that left Lauren gasping and Ethan's arms shaking with fatigue. He guided her away from the wreck, putting distance between them and the smoking vehicle, and carefully lowered her to sit on the shoulder. "Don't let me die," Lauren whispered. Her eyes were unfocused, shock setting in. "Please, she needs her mom." "You're not going to die," Ethan said firmly. He pulled off his flannel shirt, leaving just the t-shirt beneath, and pressed the fabric against the gash on her temple. "Keep pressure here. Hold it tight." She raised her good hand to hold the shirt in place, and Ethan quickly assessed the rest of her injuries. The left arm was definitely broken, bent at an angle that made his stomach turn. Her breathing was rapid and shallow, possible broken ribs. Blood soaked through her business suit on the left side, source unclear. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "Hear that?" Ethan said. "Ethan, help's almost here. You're doing great, Lauren. Just stay with me." Her eyes started to drift closed. "Hey, Lauren, look at me." Ethan touched her face gently, turning her toward him. "Tell me about Sophie. What's she like?" "She's—" Lauren's voice was faint. "She loves butterflies, wants to be an artist." "Yeah? Maya, my daughter, she loves to sing. That's where I was headed this morning. Her recital." You should go." "I'm exactly where I need to be," Ethan said. The first emergency vehicle appeared, a fire truck, lights blazing. It pulled onto the shoulder ahead of them, and firefighters jumped out, already moving with practiced efficiency. One rushed to the sedan with an extinguisher. Two others ran toward Ethan and Lauren with medical gear. "Sir, we've got her now," the paramedic said, kneeling beside them. She was young, competent-looking, already assessing Lauren with quick, professional eyes. "Can you tell me what happened?" Ethan gave a rapid summary. The crash, getting her out, approximate time since impact. The paramedic nodded, processing information while her partner brought over a backboard and medical kit. "You did good," she said to Ethan. "We'll take it from here." Ethan started to stand, but Lauren's good hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. "Wait," she said. Her eyes were clearer now, focused with sudden intensity despite the pain. "My briefcase. It's still in the car, please." "Ma'am, we need to focus on your injuries right now," the paramedic said gently. "You don't understand. That briefcase. It has security keys, access codes. If someone gets them..." Lauren's breathing was getting more rapid, panic overriding pain. "My company, hundreds of employees, millions in client data, everything." The paramedic looked at Ethan, then at the smoking sedan, then back at Lauren. "We can't send someone into an unstable vehicle for property." "She's going into shock," her partner said quietly. "Heart rate's elevated. We need to transport." But Lauren wouldn't let go of Ethan's wrist. "Please," she whispered. "Please, I'm begging you." Ethan looked at the sedan. The fire department had sprayed suppressant on the engine, and the smoke had lessened. But the vehicle was still crumpled, unstable, leaking fluids onto the highway. Going back in was monumentally stupid. "Where in the car?" he asked. "Back seat, black leather. It should be on the floor behind the driver's seat." "Sir, I really can't recommend..." the paramedic began. But Ethan was already moving. He approached the wreck from the other side this time, where the firefighters had established a safety perimeter. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with captain's bars, stepped into his path. "Civilian area ends here, sir." "There's a briefcase in the back. It's got critical security information. I'm going to get it." "Absolutely not. That vehicle could go up any second." "Then I'll be quick." Ethan stepped around him and climbed back onto the undercarriage before anyone could physically stop him. He heard the captain swearing behind him, heard someone calling for additional support, but he was already lowering himself back through the driver's side door. The interior was even worse now. More smoke, more chemical smell, and a deep creaking sound that suggested the vehicle's structure was continuing to collapse. Ethan pulled his shirt back over his face and squeezed into the back seat area. The briefcase was exactly where Lauren had said, wedged against the crumpled door. Ethan grabbed it and started to pull, but it was caught on something. He yanked harder. The case shifted but didn't come free. Heat was building rapidly. Ethan could feel it through the soles of his boots, radiating from somewhere beneath the vehicle. The creaking grew louder. He braced his foot against the seat and pulled with everything he had. The briefcase came free suddenly, sending him stumbling backward into the center console. He caught himself, clutched the case to his chest, and scrambled for the opening. Hands grabbed him as soon as he emerged, the fire captain and another firefighter hauling him up and practically throwing him off the wreck. They pulled him 20 feet back, and seconds later there was a deep whump sound as something in the sedan's engine ignited. Flames shot up from beneath the hood. "You stupid, reckless, idiotic..." the captain started. "Here." Ethan shoved the briefcase at him. "Give this to the woman, Lauren, the driver." He didn't wait for a response. He walked back to where the paramedics were loading Lauren onto a stretcher, his hands shaking now with delayed adrenaline. One of the paramedics was establishing an IV line, while the other stabilized her arm. Lauren saw him approaching, and her eyes locked on the briefcase the fire captain was carrying over. "You got it," she breathed. "You actually got it." "Yeah, well..." Ethan managed something like a smile. "Seemed important." "Sir, we need to transport," the paramedic said. "Are you injured? Do you need evaluation?" "I'm fine. Take care of her." They lifted the stretcher into the ambulance. Just before they closed the doors, Lauren raised her good hand slightly, reaching toward him. "Thank you," she said. "I don't even know your last name." "Cole. Ethan Cole." "Lauren Park. And I..." Her voice caught. "I won't forget this." The doors closed. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing. Ethan stood on the shoulder of the highway as more emergency vehicles arrived. Additional fire trucks, police cruisers, a tow truck. One of the officers approached him for a statement, and Ethan recounted everything in the flat, factual tone that the situation seemed to require. Yes, he'd witnessed the crash. Yes, he'd pulled the driver from the vehicle. Yes, he understood he'd put himself at significant risk. No, he didn't need medical attention. No, he didn't want recognition. He gave his contact information, answered every question, and waited for the moment when he could leave. By the time the police finished with him, it was 11:47. Ethan sat in his truck and stared at the dashboard clock. The job site was still 90 minutes away. Even if he left right now, he'd arrive close to 1:30. No time to do the work. No point in going at all. Maya's recital started at 2:30. The math had changed. Different equation, same impossible answer. If he drove straight to the school, he could make it with time to spare. Park in the back, slip into the auditorium, find a seat somewhere near the middle. Maya would see him there. He could give her that at least. This one promise kept. This one afternoon where he chose her first. But Jim Horace's text still glowed on his phone screen. Need you there by 9 or we lose the contract. Ethan had already missed that deadline by 3 hours. The contract was lost. And without that contract, there'd be no paycheck this week. Which meant rent would be late again. Which meant another conversation with his landlord, another round of promises and extensions, another layer of stress that Maya pretended not to notice. He couldn't afford to miss work. But he'd already missed work. The damage was done. So he could either show up late, grovel to Jim, and hope there was some way to salvage something from the situation, or he could accept the loss and give Maya the one thing she'd actually asked for. Ethan pulled out his phone and typed a message to Jim. Major accident on highway. Police held me for statement. Can't make the job. I'm sorry. He stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. Then he put the truck in gear and started driving toward his daughter's school. The highway opened up ahead of him, traffic flowing normally now that emergency crews had cleared one lane. Ethan merged into the steady stream of vehicles and tried not to think about how many of these drivers had passed the wreckage without stopping, how many had seen that hand against the glass and kept going. He couldn't judge them. An hour ago, he'd almost been one of them. His phone buzzed. Jim's response, "This is the 3rd time this year, Cole. Don't bother coming back." Ethan read the message once, then set the phone face down on the passenger seat. 3 missed jobs. 3 times when life had interfered with work and work had lost. Once when Maya had gotten sick at school and the daycare wouldn't keep her. Once when his truck broke down and he couldn't afford both the repair and the cab fare to the site. And now this. Jim wasn't wrong to fire him. Contractors needed reliability. They needed people who showed up when they said they would, regardless of circumstances. Ethan understood that. He'd have made the same call. It just meant starting over. Again. The school appeared ahead, a low brick building with a playground out front and a banner announcing the spring concert. Ethan pulled into the parking lot and found a space in the back. Inside his truck, with the engine ticking as it cooled, he caught sight of himself in the rearview mirror. His shirt was torn and stained with blood. Lauren's blood, he realized. His arms were covered in scrapes and bruises from climbing through the wreck. His face was smudged with smoke and dirt. He looked like he'd been through a war. He had an emergency change of clothes in the back, always did, for those times when sawdust and paint made him too dirty to pick Maya up from school. Ethan grabbed the duffel bag and changed quickly, balling up the ruined shirt and shoving it under the seat. Clean t-shirt, less destroyed jeans. A quick wipe of his face with a wet wipe from the glove compartment. Better. Not great, but better. Ethan walked into the school building and followed the signs to the auditorium. The hallways were decorated with children's artwork, bright paintings and careful drawings, construction paper flowers and handprint turkeys left over from Thanksgiving. Maya's class had contributed a series of self-portraits. Ethan spotted hers immediately, the only one with a tool belt drawn on the adult figure standing next to the child. The auditorium was already filling with parents, grandparents, younger siblings squirming in seats. Ethan slipped in through the back door and scanned the rows for an empty spot. Front section was packed, Middle was filling fast. There, 3 rows from the back, an aisle seat. He made his way over and sat down just as the lights dimmed. A teacher walked onto the stage and welcomed everyone to the spring concert, explaining the program and asking that all phones be silenced. The first group of children filed out, kindergartners, singing something about rainbows. They were adorable and slightly off-key and completely unsynchronized. Parents filmed everything anyway. Then the second graders. Then the third graders, which included Maya's class. She walked onto the stage in the costume they'd sewn together, a simple dress with flower appliques that had taken them 3 YouTube tutorials and 2 sewing kit purchases to complete. Her hair was pulled back in a neat braid that Ethan definitely hadn't done. Mrs. Chen's work, probably. Her music teacher. Maya scanned the audience as the children arranged themselves in their positions. Ethan saw the exact moment she spotted him. Her eyes went wide, and her careful performance face cracked into a genuine smile. He smiled back and gave her a small thumbs up. The music started. The children sang. Maya knew every word, hitting every note, and Ethan felt something in his chest crack open with pride and relief and the strange, complicated grief that came from knowing how close he'd been to missing this. What would he have said to her tonight if he'd chosen the job? If he'd tried to salvage the contract and arrived home late after she was already in bed? Would she have forgiven him? Probably. Maya always forgave him, but he wouldn't have forgiven himself. The concert continued, more songs, more grades, a finale where all the classes came out together. Ethan watched it all, committing every moment to memory. Not because it was perfect, or because Maya was the best singer, or because the production values were impressive. He watched because he was there, because he'd made a choice and kept a promise, and sometimes that was the only victory available. When it ended, parents flooded the stage area to collect their children. Ethan worked his way through the crowd until he found Maya being congratulated by Mrs. Chen. "Daddy!" Maya launched herself at him, and Ethan caught her, lifting her up despite the fact that she was getting too big for it. "You were amazing," he said. "Best singer up there. You came. I thought you couldn't come." "I made it work." Not quite a lie. Not quite the truth. Mrs. Chen smiled at them both. "She was wonderful. Such a lovely voice." "That's all her," Ethan said. "I can't carry a tune to save my life." They talked for a few more minutes, polite teacher conversation about Maya's progress and participation and enthusiasm. Then Ethan and Maya headed out to the parking lot, her hand in his, her voice bright as she recounted every detail of the performance. "Did you see when Tommy forgot the words? He just stood there with his mouth open." "I saw. You covered for him nice, though. Sang a little louder." Mrs. Chen said that's what good performers do. They help the whole group succeed. They reached the truck, and Ethan helped Maya into the passenger seat. She was still talking as he started the engine, describing the rehearsals and the costume adjustments and the kid who threw up backstage from nerves. "So what happened with your work thing?" Maya asked as they pulled out of the parking lot. "Did you finish early?" Ethan hesitated. "There was an accident on the highway. I stopped to help." "Was anyone hurt?" "Yeah, a woman, but she's going to be okay." "Did you have to call 911? "I did." Maya processed this information seriously. "So you were a helper?" "I guess so." "Like a hero?" "No," Ethan said quietly. "Not a hero. Just someone who stopped." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, Maya humming the songs from the concert under her breath. Ethan's phone buzzed repeatedly in his pocket. Probably Jim calling to formalize the firing, or the police with follow-up questions, or something else requiring his attention and energy. He ignored it. Right now, in this moment, he was exactly where he needed to be, driving his daughter home from her recital, listening to her happy chatter, keeping a promise. Everything else could wait. The apartment felt smaller when Ethan's phone finally stopped buzzing. He'd made Maya her favorite dinner, grilled cheese with tomato soup, nothing fancy but something she never complained about, and they'd eaten together at their small kitchen table while she told him about every kid in her class and which ones had remembered their lines and which ones had frozen up. She was generous in her assessments, finding something kind to say about everyone, even Tommy, who'd forgotten half the words. After dinner came the bedtime routine. Brush teeth, pick out tomorrow's clothes, One chapter from the book they were reading together about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Maya fell asleep before Ethan finished the chapter, her breathing evening out into the soft rhythm that meant she was truly gone. He sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, just watching her sleep. 7 years of being her father, and he still wasn't used to how peaceful she looked like this. How unworried. During the day, she carried herself with a careful awareness that made her seem older than 8, but sleep stripped that away and left just a child. Ethan kissed her forehead and turned off the bedside lamp. In his own room, barely big enough for a bed and a dresser, he finally looked at his phone. 11 missed calls, 14 text messages, 2 voicemails. Most were from Jim, starting angry and progressing to coldly professional. The last one simply said, "Pick up your tools by Friday, or I'm donating them." Fair enough. Ethan had good tools. His father's tools, actually, passed down when the old man finally admitted his hands couldn't hold a hammer anymore. He'd get them tomorrow. There were 3 messages from a number he didn't recognize. The first was simple. "Mr. Cole, this is Rebecca Torres from Sentinel Security. Please call me regarding Lauren Park." The second, sent 2 hours later. "Mr. Cole, it's urgent that we speak. Lauren is asking for you." The third, sent 20 minutes ago. "Mr. Cole, Lauren is stable and recovering at Mercy General. She wanted me to pass along her gratitude and contact information. Please call when you're able." Ethan stared at the messages for a long moment. He'd given his information to the police, so it wasn't surprising someone had tracked him down. What surprised him was that anyone had bothered. He'd pulled a woman from a car wreck. Emergency responders did that every day without expecting thank you cards and follow-up calls. He typed out a brief response. "Glad to hear she's recovering. No need to call. Best wishes for her health." He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then plugged in his phone and fell into bed fully clothed. Sleep came hard. When it finally arrived, it brought dreams of twisted metal and smoke, of hands pressed against glass, of flames rising while he searched for something he couldn't find. Morning arrived too early. Maya was up at 6:30 again, singing in the bathroom, completely unaware that her father had just lost his primary source of income. Ethan made her breakfast, cereal and toast, the last of the good peanut butter, and packed her lunch with the mechanical efficiency that came from 3 years of single parenting. "What are you doing today, Daddy?" Maya asked through a mouthful of Cheerios. "Gotta pick up my tools from Jim's place, then probably make some calls, see about new work." "Did you get fired?" Ethan looked at her sharply. "What makes you ask that?" She shrugged. "You always make calls when you get fired." 8 years old, and already she'd learned to read between the lines of his careful explanations. Ethan sat down across from her and spoke honestly. "Yeah, baby, I got let go yesterday." "Because you helped that lady?" "Because I missed work." "But you had a good reason." "Good reasons don't always matter in work, Maya. People need to count on you showing up." She absorbed this with the same serious expression she'd worn when he'd explained why her mother had left. Too much wisdom for someone who should be worried about spelling tests and playground politics. "You'll find something else," Maya said finally. "You always do." "That's right. I always do." He walked her to the bus stop 3 blocks away, waited until the yellow bus pulled up, and she climbed aboard. She waved at him through the window and he waved back, maintaining the smile until the bus turned the corner and disappeared. Then he pulled out his phone and started scrolling through job listings. The construction market was tight this time of year. Spring meant big projects starting up, but those contracts had been awarded months ago to established crews. What remained were small jobs, handyman work, furniture assembly, repairs. Nothing that paid enough to cover rent and food, and the 1,000 small expenses that came with raising a child alone. Ethan sent out 11 applications before 9 in the morning. Then he drove to Jim's workshop to collect his tools. The shop was in an industrial park on the edge of town, a corrugated metal building with Jim's truck parked out front. Ethan pulled in beside it and killed the engine, trying to organize what he'd say. He'd worked for Jim on and off for 2 years. They weren't friends exactly, but there'd been a mutual respect. Ethan hoped that counted for something. Jim was in the back when Ethan walked in, measuring a piece of crown molding against a table saw. He looked up at Ethan's approach, and his expression didn't change. "Come for your gear?" Jim asked. "Yeah. I appreciate you holding it. It's in the corner, same place you left it. Ethan's tool bag sat where it always did, beside the extra sawhorses. He picked it up and tested the weight. Everything seemed to be there. Jim, I want to apologize. Don't. Jim set down the molding and faced him squarely. I don't need your apologies, Cole. I need reliability. You're a good carpenter, maybe the best finish guy I've ever worked with. But I can't keep making excuses for you with clients. I know. Do you? Because this is the third time. 3 times I've told a client you'd be there and you weren't. Doesn't matter why. Sick kid, broken truck, highway accident. The client doesn't care about the reason. They care that the job didn't get done. Ethan nodded. There wasn't anything to say to that. You've got my daughter to think about, Jim continued, his voice softening slightly. I get that. I had kids too, but you can't keep choosing her over work and expect work to keep choosing you back. I don't expect that. Good. Then we understand each other. Jim turned back to his molding. There's a guy named Martinez running a restoration crew out in Westfield. He's always looking for skilled people. Tell him I sent you. He'll probably give you a shot. Thanks, Jim. Don't thank me. Just show up when you say you will. Ethan left with his tools and Jim's recommendation and the familiar weight of starting over settling across his shoulders. He sat in his truck and added Martinez to his list of calls to make, then noticed he had a new voicemail. Rebecca Torres again. Her voice was professional, crisp, insistent. Mr. Cole, I understand you prefer not to be contacted, but Lauren is quite adamant about speaking with you personally. She's recovering well, but she's refusing to rest until she can thank you properly. Would you consider visiting Mercy General? Visiting hours are until 8 tonight. It would mean a great deal to her. Ethan deleted the message. He didn't need thanks. He definitely didn't need to visit some tech executive in the hospital and make small talk about the worst moment of both their lives. What he needed was to find work, pay his rent, and keep his daughter fed and clothed, and unaware of how close to the edge they were constantly living. He called Martinez. Got voicemail. Left a message referencing Jim's recommendation. He called 3 other contractors from his list. 2 didn't answer. The third said he wasn't hiring. By noon, Ethan had exhausted his immediate options and found himself sitting in his truck outside Mercy General Hospital. He hadn't planned to come here, had actively decided not to come here. But his truck had somehow ended up in the visitor parking lot anyway, and now he was trying to figure out what that meant about his decision-making skills. Lauren Park had nearly died on that highway. Ethan had pulled her out of a burning car and retrieved her briefcase from an exploding vehicle because she'd begged him to. That created a connection, whether he wanted one or not. Maybe seeing her conscious and recovering would close that loop somehow, provide the ending his brain needed to stop replaying the crash in his dreams. Or maybe he was just making excuses because he had nowhere else to be. Ethan walked into the hospital and approached the information desk. The elderly volunteer gave him Lauren's room number without question. Apparently Rebecca Torres had left instructions that he was cleared to visit. 4th floor, room 417. The elevator smelled like antiseptic and flowers. Ethan rode it up with a man carrying balloons and a woman clutching a teddy bear, both of them looking anxious in the way that hospitals made everyone anxious. Room 417 was at the end of a long corridor. The door was partially open, voices drifting out. Ethan hesitated in the hallway, suddenly uncertain about the protocol for visiting someone you'd scraped off a highway. I don't care what the board thinks, a woman's voice said. Lauren's voice, stronger than he'd heard it yesterday, but still carrying an edge of pain. We can't launch the security update without the full audit, not after what almost happened. Lauren, you're supposed to be resting. A different voice, younger, female. I'll rest when we've secured the client data. Did you get the backup keys from the briefcase? Yes, and it has already changed all the access codes. Everything's locked down. You can stop worrying. I'll stop worrying when I know how that briefcase survived and I didn't end up scattered across the highway. Silence. Then the younger voice spoke again, carefully. The paramedic said a civilian pulled you out before the fire department even arrived. Not just pulled me out, went back in for the briefcase, after the fire crew told him not to. Rebecca's been trying to track him down. I know, Ethan Cole. He's not returning calls. Ethan knocked on the doorframe before he could change his mind. 2 faces turned toward him. Lauren was propped up in the hospital bed, left arm in a cast, bandage on her temple, but otherwise looking remarkably alive for someone who'd been in a crushed car less than 24 hours ago. Beside her stood a woman in her mid-20s wearing a business suit and an expression of professional concern. "Mr. Cole," Lauren said, and something in her face shifted. Relief, maybe, or recognition. "You came." Seemed rude not to after all the calls. Ethan stepped into the room, feeling acutely aware of his work jeans and faded t-shirt in the polished hospital environment. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a highway." She smiled slightly. "That's supposed to be a joke. The painkillers are making me punchy." "They're making you stubborn," the younger woman corrected. She extended her hand to Ethan. "Rebecca Torres, I'm Lauren's chief of security at Park Tech Solutions." "Ethan Cole." He shook her hand, noting the firm grip and the way she positioned herself slightly between him and Lauren. Protective, professional. "You left a lot of messages." "You didn't return any of them." "Didn't seem necessary." "It's very necessary," Lauren said. "Do you have any idea what you saved yesterday? What was in that briefcase?" "You mentioned security keys, client data. Encryption keys for our entire cloud infrastructure. Access codes to secure servers holding personal information for 3 million users. Financial records. Medical data. Trade secrets." Lauren's voice was steady despite the pain medication. "If someone had gotten those keys, if they'd accessed those systems before we could change the codes, the damage would have been catastrophic. Lawsuits, regulatory fines, complete loss of client trust. My company would have been destroyed." Ethan shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the intensity of her gratitude. "You said it was important. I believed you. Most people wouldn't have gone back in. Most people wouldn't have needed to. Most people would have grabbed it the first time." Rebecca made a sound that might have been a laugh. "He's got a point." Lauren shook her head slightly, then winced. "I'm serious, Mr. Cole. You risked your life twice yesterday. Once to pull me out, and again to retrieve that briefcase. I need you to understand the magnitude of what you did. I understand you're alive and your company's secure. That's enough." "It's not enough for me." Lauren gestured to the chair beside her bed. "Please sit. Let me at least explain properly." Ethan sat, mostly because refusing seemed more awkward than complying. Lauren took a breath, organizing her thoughts despite the obvious fatigue. Park Tech Solutions provides cybersecurity consulting for mid-sized companies. We help them protect their data, train their employees, audit their systems. It's not flashy work, but it matters. And it requires absolute trust. Our clients give us their most sensitive information because they believe we can keep it safe. Makes sense. Yesterday morning, I was driving to a meeting with a potential client. Healthcare network. 15 hospitals. Millions of patient records. They were about to sign a contract with us, the biggest deal my company has ever negotiated. She paused. I had physical backup keys in that briefcase because I was going to demonstrate our security protocols, show them exactly how we protect critical data. And if someone had gotten them, we would have been exposed as the exact thing we promised to protect against, a security company that couldn't secure its own systems. Lauren's jaw tightened. I would have lost everything, the company, the employees who depend on me, my daughter's future. Ethan thought about Sophie, 6 years old, who loved butterflies and wanted to be an artist. You mentioned her yesterday, your daughter. Something in Lauren's expression softened. That's what I was thinking about when the car flipped. Not the company or the data or the meeting, just that Sophie needed her mother, that I couldn't leave her. She met Ethan's eyes. You understood that. When I told you about her, you got it immediately. I've got a daughter too, Maya. She's 8. Then you know. You know that everything else is just noise compared to being there for your child. Ethan nodded slowly. He knew. Rebecca cleared her throat gently. Lauren, we should let Mr. Cole get back to his day. You need rest. In a minute. Lauren reached for a folder on the bedside table with her good hand. Mr. Cole, Ethan. Can I call you Ethan? Sure. Ethan, I want to offer you something, a proper thank you. That's not necessary. Please let me finish. She opened the folder and pulled out a piece of paper. I spoke with my board this morning. We unanimously agreed to offer you a reward, $50,000. The number hung in the air like something physical. $50,000. That was more than Ethan made in a year. That was rent paid for 2 years solid. That was Maya's college fund started. That was breathing room he hadn't had since her mother walked out. "I can't take that," Ethan said. Rebecca blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I can't take your money. I didn't help you for a reward." Lauren studied him carefully. "What did you help me for?" "Because you needed help." "That's it?" "That's it." The room went quiet. Rebecca looked genuinely confused. Lauren's expression was harder to read, something between respect and frustration. "Most people would take the money," Rebecca said carefully. "I'm not most people." "Clearly." Lauren set down the folder. "Can I ask what you do for a living, Ethan?" "Carpenter. Finish work, mostly. Cabinets, trim, detail stuff." "And business is good?" Ethan thought about Jim firing him, about the 11 applications he'd sent out that morning, about the rent check he'd be writing in 2 weeks with money he didn't have yet. "Business is fine." Lauren's eyes narrowed slightly. She wasn't buying it. "You lost work yesterday, coming to help me." "That's not your problem." "It's absolutely my problem if you're suffering consequences because you saved my life." "I'm not suffering. I'm just looking for the next job. That's construction. Always has been." Rebecca pulled out her phone. "What's your company name? I'll have our facilities manager reach out. We're renovating our offices next quarter. Always need skilled contractors." "I don't have a company. I work for other people." "Then give me your resume. We can find something." "Rebecca," Lauren said quietly. The younger woman stopped talking immediately. Lauren turned back to Ethan. "You really won't take the money?" "No." "And you don't want connections or favors or anything else?" "No." "Why not?" Ethan considered how to explain something he wasn't entirely sure he understood himself. "Because if I take your money, then yesterday becomes a transaction. I helped you and you paid me. But that's not what happened. I didn't help you because I thought I'd get something out of it. I helped you because you were a person who needed help, and I was there." He shrugged. "Taking payment changes what it was." Lauren was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Do you know what I was doing when I crashed? Driving too fast?" A ghost of a smile. "Running late. I had back-to-back meetings all morning. Sophie's school called. She'd forgotten her lunch. I told them I couldn't come. Too busy, too important. Let her buy cafeteria food for once." She looked down at her casted arm. "I was speeding because I'd prioritized a meeting over my daughter. Again. And the universe decided to remind me what actually matters." It wasn't the universe. It was probably a tire blowout. The fire investigator said the same thing, but the metaphor stands. Lauren met his eyes again. "You made a different choice yesterday. You were driving to work and you stopped. For a stranger. Even though it cost you. It was the right thing to do." "Most people don't do the right thing when it's expensive." Ethan stood up, suddenly tired of the gratitude and the philosophy and the weight of being made into something he wasn't. "Look, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad your company's secure. But I'm not a hero and I don't need a reward. I just need to get back to finding work and taking care of my kid." He was halfway to the door when Lauren spoke again. "Ethan, wait." He stopped but didn't turn around. "Thank you," Lauren said simply. "Not for refusing the money or being noble about it. Just thank you for stopping, for seeing me, for understanding about Sophie. You didn't have to do any of that, and you did, and it mattered." Ethan looked back at her. She looked exhausted and in pain and absolutely sincere. "You're welcome," he said. Then he walked out of the hospital room, down the antiseptic hallway, into the elevator that smelled like flowers and fear. He walked through the lobby and out into the parking lot where his truck waited with its worn seats and its check engine light that had been on for 3 months. He sat behind the wheel and realized his hands were shaking. $50,000. He'd just turned down $50,000. Ethan pulled out his phone and called Martinez again, still voicemail. He left another message, trying to keep the desperation out of his voice. Then he called the apartment complex office and asked about payment extensions on rent. The manager said he could have until the end of the month, but after that, they'd start eviction proceedings. It was policy. Surely he understood. Ethan understood. He picked up Maya from school that afternoon and took her to the playground even though it was getting cold and he should have been making more calls. She played on the swings while he sat on a bench and watched her arc back and forth against the gray sky, laughing at something only she could hear. "Push me higher, Daddy," she called. Ethan walked over and gave her a push, then another, sending her soaring. Her laughter cut through the autumn air like light through fog. "Higher! Any higher, and you'll fly away. Then catch me when I come back down." He would. He always would. That was the job. The only job that actually mattered. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Ethan pulled it out and saw an email notification. Subject line, "Job offer, Park Tech Solutions." He almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won out. The email was from Rebecca Torres. Brief and professional. Park Tech was looking for a facilities manager to oversee their office renovation and handle ongoing maintenance. The position paid $60,000 a year plus benefits. If Ethan was interested, they'd like to schedule an interview. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. $60,000 a year. Health insurance. Paid time off. Steady work. Everything he needed, everything he'd been fighting for, offered by someone who felt indebted to him, someone he'd specifically told he didn't want favors or connections. "Daddy, you stopped pushing." Ethan looked up. Maya was slowing down, dragging her feet to brake. "Sorry, baby, got distracted." By what? By a job offer that felt like charity, by the nagging sense that taking it would make him a hypocrite, by the question of whether pride was a luxury he could actually afford. "Just thinking," Ethan said. "About work stuff." "Yeah." Maya hopped off the swing and came to stand beside him, her small hand finding his. "You'll figure it out, you always do." That simple faith, that absolute trust that he'd make the right choice because he was her father, and fathers made right choices. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "Come on, let's go home and figure out dinner." They walked back to the truck together, Maya chattering about her day and the math test she'd aced and the art project they were starting tomorrow. Ethan listened and responded and pretended his mind wasn't elsewhere. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table and stared at the email on his phone screen. He could take the job. Tell himself it wasn't charity because he had legitimate skills and they had a legitimate need. Convince himself that turning it down was stupid pride that would only hurt Maya in the long run. Or he could decline politely and keep looking for work that came from his own merit, not from gratitude and obligation. The practical choice was obvious. The right choice was less clear. Ethan thought about Lauren asking him why he wouldn't take the money. About his answer, that payment would change what yesterday had been. Turn a moment of human decency into a transaction. But wasn't work always a transaction? Labor for money, time for security. That was the whole system. Why did this feel different? Maybe because he knew exactly why they were offering it. Because the job wouldn't exist if he'd driven past that wreck. Because accepting it meant acknowledging that yesterday had been an investment that was now paying dividends. Ethan set down his phone and pressed his palms against his eyes. He needed work. Maya needed stability. And he was sitting here agonizing over the ethics of accepting help from someone whose life he'd saved. His father would have laughed at him, would have said pride didn't pay bills and Maya couldn't eat principles. His father would have been right. Ethan picked up his phone and started typing a response to Rebecca Torres. He got as far as "thank you for reaching out" before he stopped. Through the thin wall, he could hear Maya breathing in her sleep, soft and steady, trusting that tomorrow morning would come and he'd be there to make breakfast and pack her lunch and walk her to the bus stop. She trusted him to make the right choices. He just wished he knew what the right choice was. Ethan deleted the response without sending it. The cursor blinked on the empty screen for a moment before he closed the email entirely and set his phone face down on the table. He'd make a decision in the morning when his head was clear and the weight of the day wasn't pressing down quite so hard. But morning brought no clarity, only Maya asking why he looked so tired and whether they could have pancakes instead of cereal. Ethan made the pancakes from a box mix because he wasn't talented enough for from-scratch anything, and watched his daughter drown them in syrup while he drank coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. "You keep staring at your phone," Maya observed between bites. "Just waiting on some calls about work." "Did that lady die?" The one from the accident? No, baby. She's okay. She's in the hospital, but she's going to be fine. Maya considered this while chewing thoughtfully. That's good. Are you sad anyway? Why would I be sad if she's okay? I don't know. You just look sad. 8 years old, and she could read him better than anyone. Ethan managed a smile that probably didn't reach his eyes. Just worried about boring adult stuff. Nothing for you to think about. Okay. She took another bite, then added, Mrs. Patterson says worrying doesn't fix problems. She says you have to make a choice and trust it. Mrs. Patterson's your teacher? She's the counselor. She talks to us sometimes about feelings. Ethan wondered if Maya had been talking to the school counselor about him, about their situation, about all the things he tried to shield her from. The thought sat uncomfortably in his chest. After he walked Maya to the bus stop, Ethan spent the morning making calls that went nowhere. Martinez finally called back to say he'd filled his crew. 2 other contractors said they'd keep his information on file, which was polite code for no. The handyman service said they only hired people with bonded business licenses. By noon, Ethan was staring at the Park Tech email again. His phone rang before he could overthink it further. Unknown number. This is Ethan. Mr. Cole, it's Rebecca Torres. I hope I'm not interrupting. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. No, I got your email. Good. I wanted to follow up personally. Have you had a chance to consider the position? I'm still thinking about it. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Rebecca spoke again, her tone was more careful. Can I be direct with you? Please. Lauren told me you refused the reward money. She also said you seemed uncomfortable with the idea of accepting help. I want to make something very clear. This job offer isn't charity. It feels like charity. I understand why you'd think that. But here's the reality. We need a facilities manager. Our current contractor is unreliable and overpriced. We're about to start a major renovation that requires someone with genuine expertise in finish work and detail carpentry. Lauren suggested you because you literally have those exact skills. Rebecca's voice was firm, professional. If you were unqualified, we wouldn't be having this conversation regardless of what happened on that highway. You wouldn't be having this conversation if I hadn't pulled her out of that car. Probably not, Rebecca admitted. But that's how most opportunities work, isn't it? Somebody knows somebody. A friend makes a recommendation. You happen to be in the right place. Luck and connection matter in every industry. This is different. Why? Because the connection came from saving a life instead of playing golf with the right people. She let that sit for a moment. Mr. Cole, I've worked in corporate hiring for 8 years. I've seen positions filled because someone's nephew needed a job, or because 2 executives went to the same college, or because somebody made a good impression at a cocktail party. At least this recommendation is based on actual character and demonstrated skill. Ethan didn't have a good response to that. Look, Rebecca continued, I'm not trying to pressure you. If you're genuinely not interested in the work itself, that's fine. But if you're only declining because of pride or principle or whatever, I'm asking you to reconsider. We're offering a real job with real responsibilities. Whether you choose to accept it is up to you. Can I think about it? Of course. We'd like to fill the position within 2 weeks, so if you could let me know by Friday, that would be helpful. Friday was 3 days away. Ethan said he'd be in touch and ended the call. He spent the afternoon doing odd jobs around the apartment, fixing the dripping faucet he'd been ignoring for 2 months, tightening the loose cabinet doors, patching the hole in Maya's bedroom wall where she'd accidentally thrown a book too hard. Busy work. The kind of task that let his hands move while his mind churned. Rebecca was right about networking. Most jobs came from connections. Ethan had gotten work with Jim because his father had known Jim's father. That was networking too, just a different kind. So why did this feel so different? Because you know exactly what they're buying, a voice in his head answered. They're not buying your carpentry skills. They're buying a clear conscience. But another voice countered, does it matter why they're hiring you if the work is legitimate and you're qualified? He was still arguing with himself when he picked up Maya from school. She was unusually quiet on the walk home, her backpack dragging slightly against the sidewalk. Everything okay? Ethan asked. Mm-hmm. You're not chatty today. Just tired. They walked another block in silence before Maya spoke again. Daddy, do we have enough money? Ethan's stomach dropped. Why are you asking that? Sarah at school said her dad lost his job and now they might have to move. She was crying at lunch. Maya looked up at him with those two observant eyes. You lost your job too. I'm between jobs right now. That's different. But if you don't find a new one, will we have to move? Ethan stopped walking and knelt down so he was at her eye level. Maya, I want you to listen to me. We're going to be okay. I'm going to find work and we're going to stay right where we are. You don't need to worry about that. But what if you don't find work? I will. How do you know? Because I always have before, and because I'm good at what I do, and because I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you're taken care of. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. That's my job, baby, being your dad, making sure you're safe and fed and happy, and I take that job very seriously. Maya nodded slowly, but Ethan could see the worry still there behind her eyes, the same worry he saw in the mirror every morning. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan pulled up the Park Tech email for the 10th time and actually read through all the details. Facilities manager, $60,000 annual salary, health insurance that included dental and vision, 2 weeks paid vacation. Responsibilities included overseeing building maintenance, managing contractor relationships, coordinating the upcoming office renovation. It was everything he needed. It was also everything he'd said he didn't want. Ethan opened a new email and started typing. Ms. Torres, thank you for the opportunity and for the follow-up call. I appreciate you taking the time to explain the position. After careful consideration, he stopped, stared at the words, deleted them, started again. Ms. Torres, I'd like to schedule an interview to discuss the facilities manager position. His finger hovered over the send button. Maya's voice echoed in his head. Do we have enough money? His own voice answering. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you're taken care of. Ethan hit send before he could change his mind again. The response came back in less than 5 minutes. Rebecca suggested Thursday at 10 in the morning at the Park Tech offices. Business casual attire. Bring references if he had them. Ethan confirmed the appointment and then sat in the quiet of his kitchen, trying to figure out if he'd just made the right choice or sold out everything he'd claimed to stand for. The next 2 days passed in a strange fog of preparation. Ethan dug out the one dress shirt he owned and realized it didn't fit anymore. He'd lost weight since the last time he'd needed it for a funeral 3 years ago. He bought a new shirt at a thrift store for $6 and hoped it looked professional enough. He called the 3 contractors he'd worked for most recently and asked if they'd serve as references. 2 said yes immediately. The third, Jim, was silent for a long moment before speaking. You're applying at Park Tech? Yeah, facilities manager position. That's the security company, right? The one where the CEO crashed on the highway. That's the one. Another pause. You pulled her out of that wreck. It wasn't a question. Jim had clearly put the pieces together. Ethan didn't bother denying it. I was there. And now they're offering you a job. They need someone with finished carpentry experience for a renovation. Cole. Jim's voice was flat. I've known you for 2 years. You're a lot of things, but you're not a liar. Don't start now. Ethan closed his eyes. You're right. They're offering because of what happened, but the work is real and I'm qualified for it. Are you asking me if you should take it? I'm asking if you'll be a reference. Jim sighed, a long exhale that came through the phone like disappointment. Yeah, I'll be a reference. You're a good carpenter and you show up when you say you will, mostly. A beat. But Cole? Make sure you're taking this job because you want the work, not because you feel obligated. I want the work. You sure about that? Ethan wasn't sure about anything, but he said, yeah, I'm sure. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray. Ethan dropped Maya at school early and drove across town to the Park Tech Solutions building, a modern 3-story structure with lots of glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed success and stability. His truck looked decidedly out of place in the parking lot full of luxury sedans and electric vehicles. He sat in the cab for 5 minutes, giving himself a pep talk that felt increasingly hollow. This was just an interview. He could still back out if it felt wrong. He didn't owe anyone anything, except he did owe Maya stability. He owed her a father who could pay rent and buy groceries and not lie awake every night calculating how many days until the money ran out. Ethan walked into the building. The lobby was all polished concrete and minimalist furniture. A young woman at the reception desk looked up with a practiced smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "Ethan Cole. I have a 10 o'clock with Rebecca Torres." "Of course, Mr. Cole. Please have a seat. I'll let her know you're here." Ethan sat in one of the modern chairs that looked stylish but felt uncomfortable. Around him, employees moved with purpose. Young, well-dressed, carrying tablets and coffee cups with the company logo. Everyone looked like they belonged here. He felt like an imposter in his thrift store shirt. "Mr. Cole?" Ethan stood. Rebecca Torres approached with her hand extended, looking exactly as professional as she'd sounded on the phone. "Thank you for coming. Please, follow me." She led him through a security door, down a hallway lined with glass-walled conference rooms, and into a smaller office with a view of the parking lot. Two other people were already there, a man in his 50s with silver hair and kind eyes, and a woman about Ethan's age with sharp features and a tablet in her hands. "This is David Chen, our VP of Operations, and Maria Hernandez, our HR Director," Rebecca said. "David, Maria, this is Ethan Cole." Handshakes all around. Everyone sat. Ethan felt the weight of 3 sets of eyes assessing him. David spoke first, his voice warm. "Mr. Cole, we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. I understand you have extensive experience in finished carpentry and interior renovation work." 15 years, Ethan said. "Started as an apprentice when I was 18. Worked my way up through framing, rough carpentry, and eventually specialized in finish work. Cabinets, trim, detail carpentry, some furniture building." "And most recently you were working for Horace Construction?" "Yes, for about 2 years on and off. Before that, various contractors around the city." Maria glanced at her tablet. "Your resume shows some gaps in employment. Can you speak to that?" Here it was. The question he'd known was coming. Ethan kept his voice steady. "I'm a single parent. My daughter's 8. Sometimes I've had to choose jobs that offered more flexibility, even if they paid less. Sometimes I've had to take time off when she was sick or when childcare fell through. I've always found work again." "That must be challenging," David said, and he sounded like he meant it. "It has its moments, but we manage." Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "The facilities manager position would be full-time, 40 hours a week minimum, sometimes more during the renovation phase. Would that be manageable with your parenting responsibilities?" "My daughter's in school until 3. I'd need to leave by 2:30 to pick her up, but I can start early to make up the time. I'm also available for evening or weekend work when needed as long as I can arrange childcare." Maria made a note on her tablet. "The position includes health insurance. Would you need family coverage?" "Yes." The word came out too quickly, too eager. Ethan tried to moderate his tone. "We're currently uninsured, so that benefit would be important." David and Rebecca exchanged a glance that Ethan couldn't quite read. Then David said, "Let's talk about the actual work. We're planning a significant renovation of this building over the next 6 months. New conference rooms, updated employee lounge, refinished floors, custom built-ins throughout. We need someone who can manage contractor relationships, ensure quality work, and handle day-to-day facility issues. Does that sound like something you'd be interested in?" "It does," Ethan said. And the surprising thing was, he meant it. This was the kind of project he'd love to work on. Real craftsmanship, attention to detail, building something that would last. "Can I ask why you're not using your current contractor?" "Honestly, they don't care enough." David's expression tightened with frustration. "We hired them because they had an impressive portfolio, but their actual work has been sloppy. Missed deadlines, corners cut, no accountability. We need someone who takes pride in the work itself, not just the paycheck." Ethan understood that completely. He'd worked with too many contractors who treated every job like it was disposable, like quality didn't matter as long as they got paid. "I take pride in my work," Ethan said quietly. "Always have. When I build something, I build it to last. I don't cut corners, and I don't do sloppy." "Lauren mentioned that," Rebecca said. "She said you seemed like someone who understood the difference between doing something and doing it right." There it was. The elephant in the room, brought out into the open. Ethan met her eyes. Is that why I'm here? Because of what happened on the highway? The room went very quiet. David cleared his throat. Mr. Cole, it's a fair question, Rebecca interrupted. She set down her pen and looked at Ethan directly. Yes and no. You're here because Lauren recommended you. She recommended you because you demonstrated character and capability in an extreme situation. But you're being seriously considered because your actual qualifications match what we need. We've interviewed 3 other candidates this week. None of them had your level of hands-on experience or your approach to craftsmanship. But none of them saved your CEO's life. No, Rebecca admitted. They didn't. Does that make you uncomfortable? Ethan thought about lying, about giving the professional answer. But these people were offering him stability, and he owed them honesty. Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to be hired because someone feels obligated. We don't feel obligated, David said firmly. We feel fortunate. There's a difference. He leaned back in his chair. Mr. Cole, I've been in business for 30 years. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of things, good and bad. And I've learned that character matters more than credentials. Skills can be taught. Integrity can't. You showed integrity when nobody was watching and nothing required it. That tells me who you are. And that's exactly the kind of person I want managing my facilities. Maria nodded agreement. The healthcare company we're pursuing, the 15-hospital network Lauren mentioned, they're signing with us next month. Part of why they chose us is because of how we handled the security breach attempt. Instead of covering it up or minimizing it, we were transparent. We showed them our backup systems, our rapid response, our values. That transparency came from having a leader who prioritizes what matters. She gestured toward Ethan. You prioritized what mattered on that highway. That's not obligation. That's alignment. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Rebecca pulled out a folder. We'd like to offer you the position. $60,000 annual salary, full benefits starting day 1, 2 weeks paid vacation, and we're flexible on your schedule for childcare needs. The renovation project starts in 3 weeks. You'd begin immediately with a 2-week onboarding period to learn our systems and meet current contractors. She slid the folder across the table. Inside was a formal offer letter, professional and detailed. You don't have to answer today, David added. Take the weekend. Think about it. Discuss it with your daughter if that helps. This is a big decision. Ethan looked at the offer letter, at the salary number that would change everything, at the benefits package that included dental and vision, at the job description that sounded like work he'd actually enjoy. He thought about Maya asking if they had enough money, about his apartment with the dripping faucet and the holes in the wall, about the check engine light in his truck and the mounting stack of bills he couldn't quite pay. He thought about his father saying pride didn't feed children. He thought about Jim warning him not to take the job out of obligation. He thought about Lauren asking him why he wouldn't accept payment for doing the right thing. I don't need the weekend, Ethan heard himself say. I'd like to accept the position. Rebecca smiled. Maria made notes. David stood and extended his hand. Welcome to Park Tech Solutions, Mr. Cole. I think you're going to do great work here. They spent the next hour going through paperwork, tax forms, direct deposit information, emergency contacts, benefits, selections. Ethan chose family coverage for the health insurance even though it cost more per paycheck. Maya needed it. They both did. By the time he walked out of the building, he was officially employed. He sat in his truck and stared at the offer letter, at his signature at the bottom making it real and binding. He'd done it. He'd accepted charity dressed up as opportunity and convinced himself it was the practical choice. Or maybe he'd accepted a legitimate job offer from people who valued character and just happened to discover his through dramatic circumstances. Ethan honestly didn't know which it was. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya's school. Early dismissal today due to furnace issues. Please pick up by 12:30. Ethan checked the time, 12:15. He started the truck and drove toward the school, arriving just as parents were beginning to cluster near the entrance. Maya came out with her class, spotted him immediately, and ran over. How come we get to leave early? She asked, climbing into the truck. Furnace broke. They need to fix it. Did you have work today? I had an interview. Did you get the job? Ethan pulled out of the parking lot and merged into traffic. Yeah, baby, I got the job. Maya's whole face lit up. Really? That's so good. Where is it? What do you do? Do you start soon? Place called Park Tech Solutions. I'll be managing their building renovation, and I start Monday. Is it the company with the lady you helped? Smart kid. Too smart. Yeah, it is. So she gave you a job because you saved her? She offered me a job because they needed someone with my skills. Maya thought about this for a moment. But she wouldn't have known about your skills if you hadn't saved her. Probably not. So it's both. She knows you're good because you saved her, and she needs someone who's good. So she hired you. Ethan glanced at his daughter, 8 years old and already understanding nuance better than he did. That's probably the most accurate way to look at it. Then it's a good thing you stopped to help, Maya said matter-of-factly, because now you have a job and she has her life and everything worked out. Out of the mouths of children. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest, some knot of anxiety and guilt that had been pulled tight since the moment he'd first seen that Park Tech email. You're right, he said. Everything worked out. Can we celebrate? Maybe get ice cream? Ethan thought about his bank account, about the 2 weeks until his first paycheck, about all the reasons to say no. Then he thought about Maya's worried questions about money and the relief in her voice when he said he'd gotten the job. Yeah, he said. We can get ice cream. They stopped at the small shop near their apartment, the one that served enormous scoops, and let Maya sample every flavor before choosing. She got chocolate chip cookie dough. Ethan got coffee. They sat at one of the small outdoor tables, even though it was cold, both of them bundled in jackets. Daddy? Maya said around a mouthful of ice cream. Yeah? I'm proud of you. Ethan felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. For getting a job? For helping that lady. And for getting a job. And for being a good dad. She took another bite, completely unaware of the impact of her words. You're always worrying about taking care of me, but you're really good at it. Thanks, baby. You're welcome. They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence, Maya humming one of the songs from her recital, Ethan watching the street and trying to remember the last time he'd felt this close to okay. His phone buzzed. Another text, this time from Rebecca Torres. Glad you're joining the team. Lauren wanted me to pass along that she's being discharged tomorrow and looks forward to working with you. Working with her. Not for her. An interesting distinction. Ethan typed back, thank you, looking forward to it. And the surprising thing was, he meant it. Monday morning came with the kind of nervous energy that Ethan hadn't felt since his first day working construction 15 years ago. He'd laid out his clothes the night before, the new thrift store shirt, his best jeans, work boots that he'd cleaned until they almost looked presentable. Maya had watched him prepare with the serious attention she gave to important events. You look nice, Daddy, she'd said, adjusting his collar like she was the parent. Thanks, baby. You sure you're okay going to before school care this week? It's fine. Jessica goes there too. We can play together. Before school care cost extra, but Park Tech's flexible hours meant Ethan could start at 7 and leave by 2:30 to pick Maya up from school. It was worth the expense to make the schedule work. He dropped her off at 6:45, watching through the window as she joined a group of kids building something with blocks. She didn't look back, already absorbed in the activity. Ethan took that as a good sign and drove to Park Tech. The building looked different in the early morning light, less intimidating, more like a place where actual work happened. Ethan parked in the spot Rebecca had assigned him in her welcome email, grabbed his work bag, and walked into the lobby. The same receptionist from Thursday looked up with recognition. Good morning, Mr. Cole. Rebecca asked me to send you up as soon as you arrived. 3rd floor, office 312. Ethan took the elevator up, his boots loud on the polished floors. Most of the office was still empty this early, just a few dedicated employees already at their desks with coffee and focused expressions. He found 312 and knocked. Come in, Rebecca called. She was at her desk with 2 monitors displaying what looked like building schematics and spreadsheets. She stood when Ethan entered, gesturing to the chair across from her. Right on time. Good. We have a lot to cover today. She pulled out a folder thick with documents. This is everything you need to know about our current facilities situation. Maintenance logs, contractor contacts, building specs, ongoing issues. I figured we'd spend the morning going through it, then I'll walk you through the actual space this afternoon. They spent 3 hours reviewing systems, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, security. Rebecca was thorough and organized, walking Ethan through every detail with the precision of someone who understood that facilities management was the invisible backbone of business operations. The previous contractor left a mess, she explained, pulling up photos on her computer. See this conference room? The ceiling panels don't match. This outlet was installed crooked. The baseboards have gaps you could fit a finger through. Ethan examined the photos with a carpenter's critical eye. Whoever did this work didn't care about the details. Exactly. And in a security company, details matter. If we can't get our own building right, why would clients trust us with their systems? Rebecca closed the photos. That's why David was so emphatic about finding the right person. We need someone who sees what's wrong and knows how to fix it properly. I can do that. I know you can. Lauren was very clear about your attention to detail. Rebecca said it casually, but Ethan caught the weight behind the words. Is she here today? Ethan asked. I know you said she was being discharged from the hospital. She's working from home this week, doctor's orders, but she'll be back next Monday. Rebecca smiled slightly. She's not good at following orders to rest. We've had to confiscate her laptop twice. Ethan could picture that. Lauren in her hospital bed, demanding updates, refusing to let a car accident slow her down. The same determination that had kept her conscious and fighting while trapped in that wreck. They broke for lunch at noon. Rebecca showed Ethan to the employee lounge, a space with comfortable seating, a full kitchen, and windows overlooking a small courtyard. A handful of employees were already there, eating and talking in small groups. This is one of the spaces we're renovating, Rebecca said. The previous setup was institutional. We want something that feels more welcoming, a place people actually want to spend their breaks. Ethan studied the room with a professional eye, already seeing possibilities. Better lighting, maybe some built-in seating along the windows, warmer colors to offset the corporate gray. I have some ideas. Good. I want to hear them once you've had time to assess everything. Rebecca grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. For now, just get familiar with the space and the people. Everyone's been told you're joining the team. The afternoon was a tour of the building, top to bottom. Rebecca introduced Ethan to department heads, showed him mechanical rooms and storage spaces, pointed out every problem that needed addressing. The list was long: leaking skylights, inconsistent temperature zones, doors that didn't close properly, a loading dock that flooded every time it rained. I know it's overwhelming, Rebecca said as they finished the tour. But you don't have to fix everything immediately, just prioritize and work systematically. I'm used to overwhelming, Ethan said. This is actually better than most renovation projects I've walked into. By the time 2:30 arrived, Ethan's head was full of building systems and contractor names and repair priorities. He said goodbye to Rebecca, drove to Maya's school, and found his daughter waiting at the pickup area with her backpack and a painting she'd made in art class. How was your first day? She asked as soon as she climbed in the truck. Good. Lot to learn, but good. How was school? Fine. We learned about fractions. I don't like them. Nobody likes fractions. Do you have to use fractions at your job? Ethan thought about measurements and angles and the constant mental math of construction. Yeah, actually, all the time. Then I guess I should learn them, Maya said with resigned practicality. They stopped at the grocery store on the way home, the first real shopping trip Ethan had made in weeks without counting every item and calculating totals in his head. He still bought store brands and watched for sales, but he also got the name brand peanut butter Maya preferred and the fruit snacks she'd been asking about. Small luxuries that shouldn't have felt significant, but did. The week developed a rhythm. Early mornings dropping Maya at before-school care, days spent learning Park Tech systems and meeting with contractors about the upcoming renovation, afternoons picking Maya up and helping with homework and making dinner. It was structured in a way Ethan's previous work had never been, and he found himself adapting to the predictability. On Thursday, Rebecca called him into her office with an unexpected request. Lauren's coming in tomorrow for a few hours against everyone's advice, she said. She wants to meet with you about the renovation plans. Are you free at 10? Ethan's stomach did an uncomfortable flip. He'd been successfully avoiding thinking about Lauren all week, focusing instead on the work itself. But eventually he'd known this moment would come. Yeah, I'm free. Good. She's excited to see the preliminary ideas you mentioned. Friday morning, Ethan arrived an hour early to review his notes and sketches. He'd spent the week drafting rough concepts for the employee lounge renovation, nothing formal, just ideas based on the space and what he knew about functionality. He'd learned long ago that clients appreciated visual aids, even crude ones. At exactly 10 o'clock, Rebecca appeared at his temporary office door with Lauren beside her. Lauren looked significantly better than the last time Ethan had seen her. Still moving carefully, her left arm still in a cast, but color in her face and clarity in her eyes. She wore a professional blazer over a simple shirt, her dark hair pulled back neatly. "Mr. Cole," she said, extending her good hand, "it's strange seeing you in a context that doesn't involve twisted metal and smoke." Ethan shook her hand carefully. "Miss Park, you're looking well. Better than the alternative." She settled into one of the chairs, and Rebecca took the other. "I understand you've had a productive first week." Rebecca's been thorough. "I'm still learning the building, but I have a good sense of the scope." "Excellent. Rebecca mentioned you have some preliminary ideas for the lounge renovation?" Ethan pulled out his sketches, rough drawings that showed the current layout versus his proposed changes. Nothing fancy, just enough to communicate the concept. He talked them through his thinking: better flow, more natural light, built-in storage that would reduce clutter, a coffee station that wouldn't create bottlenecks. Lauren studied the sketches with the focused attention of someone who understood that details mattered. She asked good questions about materials and costs and timeline, questions that demonstrated she'd actually thought about the project beyond just approving a budget. "This is smart design," she said finally. "Functional but welcoming, exactly what we need." She looked up at Ethan. "How soon can you start?" "The contractor bids are still coming in, probably 2 weeks until we can break ground." "That works. Rebecca, make sure Ethan has final approval authority on material selection. I trust his judgment." She said it casually, but Ethan felt the weight of that trust. Rebecca nodded and made a note. "Anything else?" "Actually, yes." Lauren turned back to Ethan. "I owe you a conversation. A real one. Not in a hospital room while I'm on painkillers. Do you have time for lunch?" Ethan hesitated. "I usually eat at my desk." "Make an exception today." It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't quite a request either. 20 minutes later, Ethan found himself sitting across from Lauren in a small cafe 2 blocks from the Park Tech building. She'd insisted on walking despite Rebecca's protests, moving slowly but steadily with her arm held carefully against her body. They ordered, Ethan got a sandwich, Lauren got soup, and sat in the kind of awkward silence that came from 2 people who'd shared trauma but didn't actually know each other. Lauren broke it first. "Thank you for taking the job." "You don't have to thank me for accepting a paycheck." "I'm not thanking you for that. I'm thanking you for giving us a chance despite your reservations." She took a careful sip of water. "Rebecca told me you were uncomfortable with the circumstances, that you felt the offer was based on obligation rather than merit. Was I wrong?" "No," Lauren admitted. "You weren't entirely wrong, but you weren't entirely right either." She set down the water glass. "Can I tell you what I saw on that highway?" Ethan wasn't sure he wanted to hear this, but he nodded. "I saw a man who stopped when everyone else kept driving. A man who climbed into a burning wreck without hesitation. A man who understood what it meant to be a parent because he is one." Lauren's voice was steady, matter of fact. "That told me who you are at your core. And yes, that made me want to help you. But it also made me want to work with you. There's a difference." "Is there?" "There is." Lauren leaned forward slightly. "I've built my company by hiring people with character first and skills second. Skills can be taught, character can't. You demonstrated character in the most extreme circumstances possible. That's valuable. That's rare. That's worth recognizing. By offering me a job I wouldn't have gotten otherwise." "You wouldn't have gotten an interview otherwise," Lauren corrected. "The job offer came because you're genuinely qualified. Rebecca interviewed 3 other candidates. You were the best." She paused. "Does it bother you that I recommended you, or does it bother you that you needed the help?" Ethan sat back, caught off guard by the directness of the question. "I don't know." "I think it's the second one," Lauren said quietly. "I think you've spent a long time taking care of yourself and your daughter without asking anyone for anything, and accepting help feels like weakness. You don't know me well enough to psychoanalyze me. You're right, I don't. I'm just recognizing something I understand personally. Lauren's expression shifted, became more vulnerable. I built Park Tech from nothing. Started in my apartment with a laptop and an idea. Every investor told me I was too young, too inexperienced, too female to run a security company, so I did it myself, funded it myself, proved everyone wrong through sheer stubborn refusal to need anyone. Sounds familiar? It should, because that attitude almost killed me. Lauren gestured with her good hand to the cast on her left arm. I was speeding because I'd scheduled impossible back-to-back meetings. I hadn't eaten breakfast because I was on a call. I ignored my daughter calling from school because I was too busy being indispensable. And I crashed because I was so determined to do everything myself that I forgot humans have limits. The soup arrived. Lauren stirred it absently, not eating yet. You know what I thought about when that car was flipping? She continued. I thought about Sophie growing up without a mother because I couldn't admit I needed help. I thought about all the times I chose work over her and told myself it was necessary. I thought about how I'd built this company to prove I didn't need anyone, and it was going to cost me everything that actually mattered. She looked up at Ethan. You saved my life. But more importantly, you reminded me what life is actually for. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. So yes, Lauren said, I offered you a job because you pulled me out of that car, but I also offered it because I recognize a fellow stubborn, independent person who's been carrying too much alone for too long. And I wanted to give you what someone should have given me years ago, a chance to accept help without it being a referendum on your worth. The words sat between them, honest and uncomfortable. I have trust issues, Ethan said finally. With accepting help, my ex-wife left when Maya was 5, just walked out one day and never came back. Before that, she'd convinced me to let her handle our finances while I focused on work. Turned out she'd been draining our accounts the whole time. When she left, we had nothing. I swore I'd never depend on anyone again, never let anyone else have that kind of power. I understand that. Do you? Because it feels like you're asking me to trust that this job is real, that it's based on merit, that I earned it. And I want to believe that. But there's a voice in my head saying this is just another version of someone having power over me. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. That voice is lying to you. This isn't power over you. This is opportunity. What you do with it is entirely up to you. You can be mediocre and collect a paycheck, or you can be excellent and build something you're proud of. Either way, you earned the chance to make that choice. By pulling you out of a car. By being the kind of person who pulls people out of cars. Lauren picked up her spoon. That's character, Ethan. And character creates opportunities. That's not weakness. That's just how the world actually works. They ate in more comfortable silence for a while. The cafe was filling up with the lunch rush, voices and clattering dishes creating a buffer of normalcy. How's your daughter? Ethan asked. Sophie? Lauren's face brightened immediately. She's good. Scared when I didn't come home that night, but resilient. She made me a card with butterflies on it. Told me I needed to be more careful driving. Smart kid. She is, smarter than me in a lot of ways. Lauren smiled. She asked if I was going to stop working so much now. I told her I was going to try. Are you? I'm delegating more. Trusting my team, leaving the office by 6 instead of 8. She gestured with her cast. Turns out almost dying is a pretty effective wake-up call. Maya asked me if we had enough money, Ethan said, surprising himself with the admission. After I lost my last job, 8 years old, and she's worrying about whether we can pay rent. That must have been hard to hear. It was, because she shouldn't have to worry about that. That's my job. Ethan set down his sandwich. That's why I took this position, not because I suddenly believed I deserved it, but because my daughter deserves stability. And pride doesn't keep the lights on. No, Lauren agreed. But it also doesn't make you a failure to accept help when it's offered genuinely. There's a difference between dependence and interdependence. One makes you weak, the other makes you human. Ethan thought about that, about the years he'd spent refusing to ask for help, to admit he was struggling, to let anyone see that being a single parent was sometimes more than he could handle alone. about how that isolation had cost him jobs and relationships and peace of mind. "I'm not good at this," he admitted, "at accepting help, at trusting people, at believing things can work out." "I noticed," Lauren said with a slight smile. "But you're here anyway. That counts for something." They finished lunch and walked back to the Park Tech building together, Lauren moving carefully but steadily. At the entrance, she stopped and turned to Ethan. "I'm glad you're here," she said simply. "Not as the person who saved my life, as the person who's going to help make this building better. Those are separate things, and I need you to understand that." "I'm trying to." "That's enough. The rest will come." She shifted her bag on her shoulder. "I'll see you next week when I'm back full time. In the meantime, Rebecca has full authority to support whatever you need for the renovation." Ethan watched her walk into the building, then stood in the parking lot for a moment processing the conversation. Something had shifted, though he couldn't quite articulate what. Maybe it was permission to stop punishing himself for accepting opportunity. Maybe it was recognition that his worth wasn't diminished by acknowledging he needed help. Or maybe it was just the beginning of learning to trust again. He spent the afternoon reviewing contractor bids and making preliminary material selections. The work was engaging in a way he hadn't expected. Not just the physical labor he was used to, but the planning and coordination that went into creating something cohesive. Rebecca checked in twice to see if he needed anything, and both times he was struck by how supportive the environment felt. People said good morning in the hallways. Colleagues asked his opinion on design choices. It was collaborative in a way construction sites rarely were. At 2:30, he picked up Maya, who chattered about a science experiment involving vinegar and baking soda. They stopped at the library on the way home, another small luxury Ethan hadn't allowed himself in months, and Maya checked out 6 books about butterflies. "We're learning about insects," she explained. "I picked butterflies for my project." "Like Sophie," Ethan said without thinking. "Who's Sophie?" "A girl I know. She likes butterflies too." Maya absorbed this with interest. "How old is she?" 6. "Oh, so younger than me." She paused. "Is she the daughter of the lady you saved?" "Yeah." "Then butterflies are extra good luck," Maya declared with the absolute certainty of an 8-year-old. "Because you saved her mom, and now we both like butterflies. That means we're connected." Ethan smiled despite himself. "That's pretty solid logic." That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and did something he hadn't done in years. He updated his resume, not because he was looking for other work, but because Rebecca had mentioned wanting to add his credentials to the company website. Looking at his work history laid out in black and white, Ethan realized he had more experience than he'd given himself credit for. 15 years of steady skill development, project management, problem solving. It looked like a career, not just a series of jobs. He sent the resume to Rebecca and closed the laptop, feeling something unfamiliar settling in his chest. It took him a moment to identify it. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone barely holding on, but the cautious hope of someone who could see a path forward. A job that paid enough. Benefits that covered his daughter. Work that engaged his skills and intelligence. Colleagues who respected him. It wasn't everything. There were still bills to catch up on, still uncertainty about whether he could sustain this, still the learned wariness of someone who'd had stability pulled away before. But it was something. And something was more than he'd had in a long time. Ethan checked on Maya one more time, a habit he couldn't break, making sure she was breathing, making sure she was safe, and found her sleeping peacefully with a library book about monarch butterflies still clutched in her hand. He carefully extracted the book, set it on her nightstand, and pulled her blanket up to her shoulders. "I think we're going to be okay," he whispered. Maya didn't wake up, but her expression in sleep looked peaceful, trusting, like she'd never doubted it. Maybe that was what faith looked like. Not his struggle to believe things would work out, but his daughter's simple certainty that they would, because her father would make sure of it. Ethan kissed her forehead and went to bed feeling, for the first time in months, like he might actually be capable of living up to that faith. The renovation began 3 weeks later on a Tuesday morning that arrived with unseasonable warmth and clear skies. Ethan stood in the employee lounge at 6:30, watching the contractor crew arrive, their trucks pulling into the loading dock with the efficient precision of people who knew their work. He'd chosen this crew carefully after interviewing 5 different companies, selecting the one that asked the best questions and showed genuine interest in quality over speed. The foreman was a woman named Carmen Rodriguez, 50-something with calloused hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She walked through the space with Ethan, reviewing the plans he'd drawn up and approved with Lauren and Rebecca. "You've got good instincts," Carmen said, tapping the blueprints. "This flow makes sense, and you didn't over-design it. I hate when facilities managers get fancy for the sake of fancy. I learned a long time ago that simple done well beats complicated done poorly." Amen to that. Carmen called her crew over and started delegating tasks with the easy authority of someone who'd been running jobs for decades. Within an hour, the space was cordoned off and demolition had begun. Ethan spent the morning coordinating with Carmen, answering questions, making small adjustments to account for discoveries behind the walls, outdated wiring that needed replacing, water damage that required repair. This was the part of renovation he'd always loved, the problem solving in real time, the collaboration between plan and reality. At 10 o'clock, Lauren appeared in the doorway of the construction zone. She'd been back full-time for a week now, her cast replaced with a removable brace that she wore inconsistently despite doctor's orders. She stood watching the controlled chaos with the expression of someone who understood what demolition made possible. "It's really happening," she said when Ethan joined her. "Did you doubt it would?" "I doubted a lot of things before the accident. I'm trying to doubt less now." She glanced at him. "How's it feeling, being in charge of a major project?" "Familiar, just with better resources than I'm used to." Ethan gestured toward the crew. "Carmen's team is excellent. They're fast, but they don't cut corners. That's rare." "You picked them." "I trusted your judgment." That word again. Trust. It came up in every conversation with Lauren, like she was deliberately practicing what she'd almost lost. "I have a meeting with the healthcare network this afternoon," Lauren continued. "Final contract signing. It's the biggest deal the company's ever closed." "That's huge. Congratulations." "It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't gone back for that briefcase." She said it simply, stating a fact. "I've stopped trying to separate what happened on the highway from what's happening now. They're connected. That's okay." Ethan didn't argue. He was learning slowly to accept that some things couldn't be neatly categorized into debt and obligation, help and weakness. Sometimes life was just messy and interconnected, and that was fine. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm of progress. The employee lounge took shape gradually, walls painted in warm colors that Rebecca had chosen, new flooring that Carmen's crew installed with meticulous precision, built-in storage that Ethan designed and helped construct during evenings after Maya was asleep. The work was satisfying in a way that transcended just collecting a paycheck. He was building something that would last, something people would use and appreciate. Maya started coming to the office on Saturdays when Ethan worked overtime. Rebecca had suggested it after learning about childcare complications, offering the empty conference room as a place for Maya to do homework and draw while Ethan supervised the renovation. The first Saturday, Maya had been shy and quiet, uncertain about being in her father's workplace. By the third Saturday, she was greeting the weekend security guard by name and showing Carmen her drawings of butterflies. "Your daughter's got talent," Carmen said one afternoon, examining a detailed sketch Maya had made of a monarch. "Real attention to detail." "She gets that from someone," Ethan said. "Just not from me." "You're selling yourself short. I've seen your finish work on those built-ins. That's artistry." Ethan didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded and went back to checking measurements. Accepting compliments was still harder than it should be. On a Friday, 6 weeks into the renovation, Lauren called Ethan into her office. He found her standing at the window overlooking the courtyard, her back to the door. "You wanted to see me?" Ethan said. Lauren turned. Her expression was difficult to read. "Close the door, please." Ethan's stomach dropped. That tone usually preceded bad news. He closed the door and stayed standing. "I had lunch with Sophie's teacher yesterday," Lauren began. "She mentioned Sophie's been talking about a girl named Maya who loves butterflies. Apparently they're the same age and should have a play date." Ethan relaxed slightly. "Maya mentioned Sophie too, said they're connected because they both like butterflies." "Kid logic." Lauren smiled, but it faded quickly. "I wanted to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Okay. Are you happy here? Working at Park Tech? The question caught Ethan off guard. Yes. Why? Because I realized I've never actually asked. I offered you a job and you took it, and we've both been pretending that was simple. But I don't know if you're genuinely satisfied or if you're just being professional. Lauren moved away from the window and sat on the edge of her desk. I don't want you here out of obligation. I want you here because you want to be here. I want to be here, Ethan said, and realized as he said it that it was completely true. The work is good. The people are respectful. I'm using skills I'd forgotten I had. Maya has stability and health insurance, and I'm not lying awake at night calculating how many days until we run out of money. He paused. It's the best job I've ever had. Not because you offered it, but because of what it actually is. Lauren's shoulders dropped slightly, tension releasing. Good. That's good. Because I have something else to discuss, and I needed to know you were staying. What is it? The healthcare network contract is expanding. They want us to audit and upgrade security systems for all 15 hospitals. It's an enormous, multi-year project. We're going to need to hire significant staff. She met Ethan's eyes. I want to create a facilities division. Full department. You'd head it. Manage multiple buildings. Oversee larger renovation projects. Hire your own team. Ethan stared at her. That's a promotion. That's a recognition of capability. You've proven you can manage complex projects and lead effectively. Carmen told Rebecca she'd work for you full-time if you ever needed a crew chief. That's high praise from someone who's been in construction for 30 years. I've been here 2 months. And in 2 months, you've transformed our building operations, solved problems our previous contractor ignored, and demonstrated judgment I'd trust with significantly more responsibility. Lauren's voice was firm. This isn't charity, Ethan. This is me recognizing talent and offering opportunity for growth. The question is whether you're interested. Was he interested in more responsibility? In building something larger than just a single renovation? In proving he could lead, not just execute? What's the timeline? Ethan asked. The healthcare contract starts in 3 months. I'd want the facilities division established before then, which means you'd need to start hiring immediately. She handed him a folder. Salary details, benefits upgrade, job description. Take the weekend to think about it. Talk to Maya if that helps. This is a big decision. Ethan took the folder but didn't open it. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret stopping me that day, offering me the reward I refused, starting this whole complicated thing? Lauren was quiet for a moment, considering. No, she said finally. I regret a lot of things about that day. Speeding, not prioritizing Sophie, making choices that nearly cost me everything. But I don't regret what happened after. You gave me my life back and then you helped me build a better version of it. That's not something to regret. Even though I make everything complicated by overthinking every offer, especially because of that. Easy acceptance would mean you didn't care about integrity. Your complications mean you do. She smiled slightly. Besides, Sophie really wants that play date. You accepting this promotion would make scheduling easier. Ethan laughed despite himself. That's manipulative. That's parenting. We use what works. He left Lauren's office with the folder under his arm and spent the rest of the day in a daze of possibility. A department head position, his own team, projects that would challenge him and use skills he'd spent 15 years developing. That evening, after dinner and homework and the bedtime routine, Ethan sat down with Maya on the couch with the folder between them. I need to talk to you about something important, he said. Maya set down her book, immediately serious. Are we in trouble? No, baby, the opposite. Lauren offered me a promotion, bigger job, more responsibility, more money. That's good. It is, but it means I'd be working more. Not a lot more, but some evenings and maybe occasional weekends. You'd spend more time in after-school care or with a babysitter. Maya processed this with her characteristic thoughtfulness. Would you be happy doing the bigger job? I think so. It's scary but also exciting. Then you should do it. Just like that? Daddy, you worry about me all the time. You make sure I'm safe and happy and fed. You never do things just for you. She reached over and patted his hand with the solemnity of someone much older. It's okay to do something that makes you happy too. Ethan felt his throat tighten. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just notice now. She grinned. Also, if you take the job, can Sophie come over for a play date? Her mom said we could be friends. That's what this is really about. Maybe. Maya's grin widened, but I'm still right about you deserving to be happy. Monday morning, Ethan accepted the promotion. The next 3 months were a controlled chaos of hiring, training, and expansion. Ethan brought on Carmen as his crew chief, added 2 project managers with construction backgrounds, hired an administrative assistant who turned out to be invaluable for coordination. They established protocols, developed systems, created standards for quality that applied across all Park Tech facilities. The employee lounge renovation finished ahead of schedule and under budget. On the day they unveiled it, Lauren gathered the entire company in the space. The transformation was dramatic. What had been institutional and cold was now warm and inviting. Natural light flooded through cleaned skylights. Built-in seating along the windows created intimate conversation areas. The coffee station Ethan had designed eliminated the old bottleneck. Employees moved through the space with visible appreciation, touching the smooth wood finishes, testing the comfortable furniture. This is what's possible when we invest in the right people, Lauren said to the assembled company. Ethan Cole joined us 3 months ago. In that time, he's not just renovated a space. He's revolutionized how we think about our physical environment. He's built a team, he's established standards, and he's demonstrated what it looks like to take pride in craftsmanship. She looked at Ethan. Thank you for taking a chance on us. I think you took the chance on me, Ethan said. Then we took chances on each other. That's what good partnerships are. The applause that followed felt earned rather than obligatory. Ethan stood there surrounded by colleagues who'd become something like friends, in a space he'd helped create, doing work that mattered. It was so far from where he'd been 6 months ago that it almost didn't feel real. After the celebration, Ethan found Lauren in her office reviewing contracts for the healthcare network expansion. Thank you, he said from the doorway, for everything. You've thanked me approximately 200 times. I'm going to start charging for it. I'm serious. You gave me an opportunity when I needed it most, changed my life and Maya's life. That deserves acknowledgement. Lauren set down her pen. Can I tell you what you gave me? What? Perspective. Before the accident, I measured success by contracts closed and revenue generated. I worked 60-hour weeks and told myself it was necessary. I missed Sophie's recitals and field trips and bedtimes because business came first. She gestured to the clock on her wall, showing 4:30. Today, I'm leaving at 5 to take Sophie to art class. Tomorrow, I'm chaperoning her school trip to the Science Museum. I close my laptop at 7 instead of midnight, and the company is thriving. Because you hired good people to delegate to. Because I almost died, and a stranger stopped to help me and then showed me what it looks like to prioritize what actually matters. Lauren's voice was soft. You didn't just save my life on that highway, Ethan. You saved the life I've built since. The one where I'm actually present for my daughter, where I trust my team, where I remember why I started this company in the first place. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. So yes, Lauren continued, I gave you a job, but you gave me back the parts of myself I'd sacrificed to ambition. We're more than even. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Ethan spoke again. Maya keeps asking about that play date. Sophie hasn't stopped talking about it. This weekend? We have a backyard and I make terrible lemonade. Sounds perfect. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that made everything feel possible. Ethan and Maya drove to Lauren's house, a comfortable 2-story in a family neighborhood, nothing ostentatious despite her success. Sophie answered the door wearing butterfly wings and holding a jar with holes punched in the lid. I caught a caterpillar, she announced. Want to see? Maya was immediately entranced. The 2 girls disappeared into the backyard while Ethan and Lauren sat on the porch with glasses of lemonade that was, as promised, terrible. Too much lemon? Lauren asked. Way too much. It's like drinking citrus punishment. Sophie likes it sweet. I overcompensate. They watched the girls examining the caterpillar, their heads bent together in serious consultation. Sophie's butterfly wings caught the sunlight. Maya's laugh carried across the yard. They're good together, Lauren observed. Yeah, they are. It's strange, isn't it? How one moment can branch into so many others. If you hadn't stopped that day, we'd never have met. Maya and Sophie wouldn't be friends. You wouldn't be heading our facilities division. I'd probably still be working 70-hour weeks. And you might not have survived the next crisis, Ethan said quietly. Maybe. Or maybe I'd have just kept going until something worse happened. The universe has a way of sending messages until you finally listen. Ethan thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. Stopping on the highway, accepting the interview, taking the job, accepting the promotion. Each one had felt impossibly difficult at the time, weighted with doubt and fear and the learned wariness of someone who'd been disappointed before. But sitting here, watching his daughter make a friend while drinking terrible lemonade with someone who'd become an unexpected ally, Ethan realized something fundamental had shifted. He'd spent years believing that accepting help was weakness, that depending on anyone would inevitably lead to loss. But maybe the real weakness was refusing to trust that good things could happen, that people could be genuine, that opportunities could be exactly what they appeared to be. I was wrong, Ethan said suddenly. Lauren looked at him. About what? That day in the hospital when you offered me the reward, I said taking payment would change what saving you had been, turn it into a transaction. I remember. I was protecting myself. Keeping everything transactional meant I controlled the terms. If I didn't accept help, nobody could take it away. Ethan set down his lemonade. But that's not how life actually works. Everything's connected. You helped me because I helped you. I'm helping you build a better company. We're both helping our daughters have a childhood we're present for. None of it's transactional. It's just people being human together. Lauren smiled. That's what I tried to tell you. I know. I needed to figure it out myself. Most important lessons work that way. The girls ran up to the porch, breathless and excited. Can Maya stay for dinner? Sophie asked. Please? We're going to build a habitat for the caterpillar and watch it turn into a butterfly. Lauren looked at Ethan, who looked at Maya, who gave him the hopeful expression that always made it impossible to say no. Sure, Ethan said. We can stay for dinner. The evening stretched into something easy and comfortable. They ordered pizza because neither Lauren nor Ethan felt like cooking. The girls built an elaborate caterpillar habitat out of a shoebox and leaves. They ate on the back porch as the sun set, telling stories and making plans for the butterfly's eventual emergence. When it was time to leave, Maya hugged Sophie goodbye and made her promise they could have another playdate soon. Ethan and Lauren exchanged phone numbers with plans to coordinate schedules. It was normal and domestic and uncomplicated. Driving home, Maya was quiet in the passenger seat, content in the way that came from a good day thoroughly enjoyed. Did you have fun? Ethan asked. The best fun. Sophie's really nice, and Lauren makes really bad lemonade. Ethan laughed. She does. Daddy? Yeah, baby. Are we doing okay now? Like, really okay? Ethan glanced at his daughter, seeing the vulnerability beneath the question. She'd been carrying worry for so long, watching him struggle and pretending she didn't notice. She deserved to know things had changed. Yeah, Maya. We're really okay. We have a nice apartment, I have a good job, you have health insurance, and a friend who likes butterflies. We're more than okay. Good. Maya settled back in her seat. I'm glad you stopped to help that lady. Me too. Even though it was scary? Especially because it was scary. The best things usually are. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, the city lights beginning to glow as dusk settled. When they pulled up to their apartment building, not fancy but safe and warm in theirs, Ethan felt something he'd almost forgotten was possible. Contentment. Not the desperate relief of crisis averted or the anxious hope that maybe things would work out. Just simple contentment with where they were and who they'd become. That night, after Maya was asleep with her butterfly book on the nightstand and her drawings taped to the wall, Ethan sat in his kitchen with a cup of tea and thought about the past 6 months. He thought about the moment he'd seen that hand pressed against the shattered window, about the choice to stop when everyone else kept driving, about all the choices that had followed, each one feeling impossible but leading here. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to Lauren. Thanks for today. Maya had a great time. So did I. Her response came a minute later. Sophie's already planning the next play date. Fair warning, she's very organized. Ethan smiled. Maya will love that. She's been asking when the caterpillar will emerge. 2 weeks? Maybe 3. We'll have a butterfly release party. Sounds perfect. He set down his phone and looked around his small kitchen. The faucet he'd fixed, the cabinets he'd tightened, the table where he and Maya ate breakfast every morning and did homework every evening. It wasn't much, but it was enough. More than enough. Because he'd learned that security didn't come from refusing help or maintaining independence at all costs. It came from building relationships, accepting opportunities, trusting that good people sometimes offered good things for good reasons. It came from stopping when everyone else kept driving, from choosing presence over productivity, from believing that one moment of courage could branch into 1,000 moments of connection. Ethan finished his tea and went to bed, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he fell asleep without worrying about tomorrow. Because tomorrow was already built on a foundation of choices he was proud of, work that mattered, and people who'd proven themselves trustworthy. The caterpillar emerged from its chrysalis 18 days later on a Saturday morning in Lauren's backyard. Maya and Sophie had checked it every day, documenting changes with the seriousness of scientists conducting important research. When the butterfly finally broke free, they watched in awed silence as it slowly unfurled its wings. "It's a monarch," Sophie whispered. "The most beautiful kind," Maya agreed. Lauren had invited Ethan to be there for the release. They stood on the porch while the girls carefully carried the butterfly to the garden, watching as it rested on Sophie's finger, testing its new wings. "They worked hard for this," Ethan said. "Best kind of reward, the one you have to wait for." The butterfly lifted off suddenly, rising in the morning sunlight. The girls cheered, tracking its path across the yard and over the fence. It circled once, as if saying goodbye, then disappeared into the bright autumn sky. "Do you think it will be okay?" Maya asked. "It will be perfect," Lauren said. "It's ready. It knows what to do." They stood there watching the empty sky for a moment longer, and Ethan thought about transformations, about how sometimes you needed darkness and struggle and time to become what you were meant to be, about how the scariest part was trusting the process, believing you'd emerge on the other side with wings. He'd emerged. So had Lauren, and they'd helped each other do it. The girls ran off to examine where the butterfly had landed before flying away. Lauren and Ethan stayed on the porch, comfortable in the silence of people who'd been through something significant together. "Thank you," Lauren said eventually, "for everything, for stopping that day, for taking a chance on us, for showing me what actually matters. Thank you for recognizing that I needed help even when I wouldn't admit it. That's what good people do. They see what others need and offer it without expecting gratitude. I'm grateful anyway." "I know, but you don't need to be. We're even. More than even. We're just two parents trying to do right by our kids and ourselves, helping each other succeed." Lauren smiled. "That's not debt. That's just friendship." Friendship. Ethan tested the word and found it fit. They'd started as stranger and victim, morphed into employee and employer, but somewhere along the way they'd become something simpler and more valuable. Friends. People who'd seen each other at worst and best and chosen to stick around for whatever came next. "I can live with that," Ethan said. "Good, because Sophie's already planning next weekend's activity, something about building fairy houses, and you're apparently invited." Fairy houses sound great. They joined the girls in the garden, where Maya and Sophie were explaining their theory about where the butterfly would go and what adventures it would have. Ethan listened to his daughter's bright voice and felt the weight of the past year lift completely. He'd stopped on a highway because it was the right thing to do. He'd accepted help because his daughter needed stability. He'd taken chances because staying safe meant staying stuck. And somehow, impossibly, it had all led here. To a Saturday morning in a friend's garden, watching children dream about butterflies while the autumn sun warmed everything it touched. Not all stories had happy endings, Ethan knew. But this one did. Not because everything was perfect, but because imperfect people had chosen courage and trust and connection over fear. That was enough. That was everything. And when the girls asked if they could do this again next week and the week after, and maybe every week forever, Ethan didn't hesitate before saying yes. Because the bravest act wasn't stopping when everyone else kept driving. It was choosing to stay stopped, to build a life from that one moment of decision, to trust that courage compounded, that help given would return multiplied, that the world rewarded those who showed up for others. Ethan had shown up for a stranger on a highway, and the stranger had shown up for him in return. They'd both shown up for their daughters, and their daughters would learn, watching, that showing up mattered, that stopping was sometimes the most important thing you could do, that courage didn't announce itself with sirens and fanfare. Sometimes it just quietly changed everything.